In the open Pacific, an octopus gathers two empty shell halves, carries them across the sand and folds itself inside. The act is small, almost lost against the water around it. But it changes the question the ocean seems to ask. This is the largest hunting ground on Earth, too wide to patrol and too deep to corner prey in every current. Strength alone cannot search every reef or force every armored animal into the open. So some hunters answer with memory, tools, and learn tricks instead. A great white shark carries power through the blue. A sea otter, but it changes the question the ocean seems to ask. This is the largest hunting ground on Earth, too wide to patrol and too deep to corner prey in every current. The Pacific is not measured only by size. It is shaped by minds that find another way. An otter breaks the surface and rolls onto its back. Something is clutched against its chest. It is not food. It is a stone, palm-sized and smooth, tucked beneath one forelimb. The animal does not eat the rock. It keeps it. Under the loose skin of its armpit lies a pocket of hide, and inside that pocket rides a chosen tool, carried up from the seafloor and saved for the work ahead. The otter has done this before. It will do it again with the same stone. This is the temperate edge of the eastern Pacific, where giant kelp rises from the rock in brown columns and bends into a canopy at the surface. Sunlight falls in shafts through the fronds. The forest is three-dimensional, a structure of stalks and holdfasts and shadow, and everything that lives here uses that architecture to hide. Prey tucks into crevices. Prey grows a shell. Prey pulls itself flat against the rock and waits. In a place built to conceal, the hunter that finds a way through the armor wins. The otter has found one. It dives, vanishes into the green, and returns with a hard-shelled prize gripped in both paws, the same stone still riding in its pouch. Floating on its back, it lays the rock flat on its chest. Then it lifts the shell and brings it down. Once. Again. The blows land with a flat knock that carries across the water. The shell cracks. The otter picks the meat from the wreckage and lets the fragments sink. This is tool use, plain and deliberate. The rock is an anvil. The chest is a workbench. And the prey that armor and patience were meant to protect is opened by an idea rather than by force. Among the favored targets is the purple sea urchin, a spined globe wedged into the rock, grazing at the base of the kelp where the stalks anchor down. One urchin is a minor thing. A carpet of them is not. Left unchecked, urchins graze through the holdfasts that pin the forest to the seabed, and the kelp lets go. What was a canopy becomes open rock, stripped and pale, a flat plain that ecologists call an urchin barren. Little else grows there. The classroom collapses to bare stone. The otter is the reason it does not. By eating urchins faster than the urchins can strip the forest, the animal holds the whole system upright. The intelligence on display is not only in the stone against the shell. It is in the balance that a hungry, rock-carrying predator keeps without ever intending to. This role has a name in ecology, a keystone predator, a single species whose presence holds an entire community in shape. Remove it, and the structure does not simply lose one member, it changes state. The kelp that shelters fish, that softens the force of the swell before it reaches the shore, that feeds a web of grazers and drifters, depends on a small mammal cracking shells at the surface. It is an unlikely load to rest on one animal's appetite. Yet this coast has shown again and again that when the otters go, the forest follows them down. But the technique is not a gift of birth. It has to be learned. Nearby, a smaller otter works at a shell and gets it wrong. A young animal handles its prey clumsily, turning it, pressing it, losing its grip. The rock slips, the prize drops and sinks, and the little otter dives after it empty-handed. Watching is not the same as doing. The movement that looks effortless in an adult is, in a juvenile, a sequence of small failures. The wrong angle, the weak blow, the fumble at the surface. And then it works. A young otter lands a strike that counts, the shell gives, and the meat is there. The lesson has passed from one generation to the next, not through instinct, but through attention, watching, trying, failing, and trying again until the body learns what the eyes have seen. Across this coast, that transfer is how the trick survives. A tool kept in a pocket is only useful if the next otter learns to swing it. The forest holds other lives at its edges. Harbour seals rest in the shallows and drape themselves across rocks and reefs, hauling out to sleep, slipping back to hunt. They are built for speed and cold water rather than for cracking shells. Their strength and their ease in the cold carry them, and for most of their lives, that is enough. But the same abundance that feeds the seals draws something that hunts seals in turn. Where the kelp thins and the rock drops away, the structured forest ends and the water opens into blue. A great white shark moves along the kelp edge, a seal hunter built for sudden power in and around the cover where the fronds give way to open water. Here, strength needs no fronds to hide behind and no crevices to work. Only blue space and the shark's own force moving through it. This is the other answer the ocean offers. Not memory, not a kept stone, but mass and speed and teeth. A hunter that solves the problem of the sea by being larger and faster than what it eats. The otter belongs to the forest with its stone and its learned craft. The shark belongs to the open water beyond, where strength alone still rules. Between them runs the edge of the kelp, the boundary where structure ends and cover disappears. Past that edge, the ocean strips its hiding places away one by one, and the first animal to meet that openness will carry its shelter with it. Across a plain of black sand, something is walking that should not be able to walk. Two empty shell halves, clam-sized and clamped together, tilt and lurch over the seabed. There is no current strong enough to push them, and no legs the eye can find. The bundle rises slightly, tips forward, and settles a body length on. Then it does it again. Something inside is carrying it. This is the Lembe Strait, a narrow channel of dark volcanic sand off the northern tip of Sulawesi in Indonesia. On this stretch of muck plain, the seabed opens into grey and black grain, with little shelter close at hand. Divers come for that strange barrenness. For a soft animal without a shell of its own, the open sand can feel almost empty of mercy. Here there is little to hide behind. Whatever crosses it in daylight is exposed to everything that hunts by sight. The walking shells stop. A seam opens between them, and out of the gap unspools an arm, pale and boneless, gripping the sand. Then another. The mover pours itself partway into the open and reveals what has been doing the work. It is a coconut octopus, a small, soft-bodied animal with no shell and no skeleton to speak of. Everything that makes an octopus quick, the boneless body that flows through any gap, also leaves it defenseless. It has no armor of its own, so it borrows some. The shells it carries are not its shelter by accident. The octopus has gathered them, two discarded halves, a broken coconut husk, whatever hard, curved thing the seabed offers, and it keeps them. To move the load, it does something stranger still. It stiffens two of its 8 arms beneath the shells, plants their tips against the sand, and walks upright on them, rolling the whole bundle forward on tiptoe, while the remaining limbs hold the cover in place. The gait is ungainly, slow, and unmistakably deliberate. The animal is transporting its own fortress across open ground. This is defense, cut loose from the body. A crab grows armor and is stuck with its weight forever. A snail builds a shell and can never set it down. The octopus has done what no amount of muscle can do. It has separated protection from strength entirely, turned shelter into a portable object it can pick up, carry, and drop at will. The intelligence is not a harder body, it is the decision to bring cover to a place that has none. The muck is not empty of danger. Out across the flats, Other hunters work the open sand, and on ground this bare, a soft animal caught in the open has little margin for error. The octopus does not bolt. When a threat draws near, it pulls the shells around itself and closes them, folding its whole body down into the hollow and clamping the two halves together from the inside. What was a walking bundle becomes a sealed stone, a smooth, shut shape on the seabed, indistinguishable from the empty shells scattered everywhere around it. On a plain with no cover, the safest place to hide is inside a thing not worth a second look. And when the moment passes, the fortress comes apart as fast as it closed. The shells fall open, the octopus flows out, and if it needs to leave in a hurry, it draws water into its body and fires it back out in a jet, shooting across the sand and trailing a dark cloud of ink where it used to be. By the time the cloud thins and settles, the animal is gone. Everything the octopus has done here, it has done alone. The muck is a solitary place, worked by scattered single hunters far apart on the sand. But this portable intelligence, the borrowing, the building, the carrying, is nowhere more crowded than somewhere else entirely. Where the flats give way to living rock, the water fills with problem-solving lives packed shoulder to shoulder. More kinds of them gathered there than anywhere else in the sea. A shell breaks somewhere inside the reef. The sound is sharp and small, a single crack from a hole in the rubble, and nothing visible has moved to make it. The prey was armored. Something in that burrow has opened it anyway. This is the Coral Triangle, the stretch of Indo-Pacific water spanning the seas of Indonesia and the Philippines that holds more kinds of reef life than anywhere else in the ocean. The reefs here are not quiet gardens. They are crowded to the edge of every surface, animal pressed against animal, growth stacked on growth, and the competition for space and food gathers an extraordinary range of problem-solving life. On the California coast, the kelp gave prey walls to hide behind. Here the walls are alive, and so is nearly everything wedged inside them. The cracked shell belonged to the burrow of a peacock mantis shrimp. It is not a shrimp in any ordinary sense, but a hand-length animal banded in green and orange and red, folded into a tunnel it has dug in the coral rubble. Along the front of its body, it carries two club-shaped limbs, held cocked beneath the head like spring-loaded hammers. When prey comes within reach, those clubs unfold faster than almost any movement in the animal kingdom. The strike is so fast that it does something the water is not supposed to allow. As the club accelerates, the pressure in front of it falls until the water itself tears open into a bubble, and when that bubble collapses, it releases a flash of heat and a second shock behind the first. The prey is hit twice, once by the club, once by the water closing back on itself. A snail's shell, a crab's leg, the armor that stops a larger and slower hunter, comes apart against a limb smaller than a finger. Size did not open that shell. Speed did. and the animal that swings it reads the reef in a way almost nothing else can. Above the clubs sit two eyes on moving stalks, each swiveling on its own, scanning the rubble independently of the other. They carry far more kinds of color receptor than a human eye, and they register forms of light that most animals cannot detect at all. Nothing approaches the burrow unseen. When a shape drifts too close to the entrance, the eyes lock, and the stalks track it, and the shrimp rises to the mouth of its hole with both clubs raised. It does not flee into the dark. It holds the few centimeters of reef it has dug for itself. That is, intelligence turned inward, a mind and a weapon built to defend a small patch of the seabed with total precision. But not every mind on this reef is pointed at prey. Out over the slope, where the current lifts clouds of plankton off the coral, a reef manta ray banks into the flow. It is one of the largest animals on the reef and carries one of the largest brains of any fish in the ocean, and it uses none of that for killing. It feeds on drifting specks too small to chase one by one. To gather them, it opens its mouth and rolls, a slow backward somersault, looping through the thickest part of the bloom again and again, funneling water through the fine rakers in its gills. Where the food concentrates, mantas gather and roll together, and sometimes line nose to tail into a turning chain, each one riding the wake of the animal ahead, so none of the plankton escapes. The reef holds another intelligence. The mantis shrimp reads its enemies. The manta reads the ocean, the currents, the tides, the places where plankton will rise before it has risen. One mind is aimed at a shell, the other is aimed at the water itself. Neither is large in the way a shark is large, and neither needs to be. On this crowded reef, thinking has outrun bulk. All of it rests on the coral. The branching thickets that build the reef, staghorn among the fastest growing of them, are the architecture that houses every one of these minds, and they are the most fragile part of the whole system. Staghorn lives close to the upper limit of the heat it can bear. When the water warms even a degree or two past its usual summer peak and holds there, the coral drives out the algae inside it and turns bone white. And if the heat does not ease, it dies. The mantis loses its rubble. The cleaning station's empty. The crowded reef, and every mind packed into it, depends on a temperature it cannot control. For now, the water holds. The manta finishes its turn through the bloom, tips away from the slope, and glides toward the place where the reef runs out. Ahead, the coral falls away into open blue, and the current it has been reading pours off the edge into water with no bottom in sight, and no walls at all. In water with no light at all, a sound is ticking. It comes in patterns, a run of sharp clicks, a pause, another run, steady and deliberate, like a code being tapped out in the dark. There is nothing to see. A 1,000 meters down, past the last of the light, the sound is the only thing that carries. It is made by a sperm whale, the largest toothed predator on Earth and the deepest diving hunter among the great whales. To feed, it leaves the sunlit surface entirely and drops into the black, thousands of feet down, into a cold and a pressure that would crush almost anything else, hunting squid in water where the eye is useless. Down there, it does not hunt by sight. It fires clicks into the dark and reads the echoes that return, building a picture of prey it will never see. The most powerful sonar in the animal world is carried in the vast, blunt head of a hunter working blind. Above the hunt lies nothing but open ocean. This is the deep Pacific, the blue water heart of the largest sea on the planet, where the floor falls miles below the surface and there is no reef, no coast, no bottom within reach. Only water in every direction beneath a thin, bright skin of sunlight, and a darkness under it that drops further than any whale can dive. A family crossing this water is a handful of lives in an emptiness that could hold them 1,000 times over. But not all of the whale's clicks are aimed at prey. Between the hunting bursts come other patterns, short, rhythmic runs that carry no navigational purpose at all. These are codas. Each is a small, fixed rhythm, a few clicks spaced in a particular way, and the whales use them to speak to one another in the dark. A sperm whale does not live alone. The females and their young travel together for life in close, stable families, and each family shares a set of codas the way a household shares a language. The rhythms are not born into the body. A calf learns them, the particular patterns its family uses, from the adults around it. And by those patterns, a clan knows its own across miles of open water. Two families may share the same sea and hunt the same squid and never mix, because their codas do not match. The code is the identity. It marks who belongs. That togetherness has a cost. When the adults dive to feed, they go where their calves cannot follow. A young whale cannot hold its breath for the long descent into the cold and the black. It must stay near the surface where it can breathe. So the family does not leave it alone. As the grown whales tip and fluke and slide down into the dark, one adult hangs back at the surface, resting alongside the calf. And across a clan, that duty passes from one animal to another, each in turn giving up a dive to keep a young whale company, while the rest are far below. On the widest, emptiest water in the world, the calf is never left by itself. And while it waits, it practices. The calf works at the family's codas the way it works at everything, clumsily at first, the rhythms uneven, the clicks falling out of time, repeating the patterns around it until they come out right. No adult teaches it in any formal sense. It listens and it copies, and slowly the family's code becomes its own. The ocean has now shown intelligence that outlives one body. The otter's stone and the octopus's shells were solutions held by a single animal, useful only while that animal lived. A coda is something else. It is knowledge kept outside any one whale, a pattern held by the whole family, learned fresh by each calf, carried forward long after the whale that first clicked it has made its last dive. The code does not sync with the individual. It belongs to the line. But a family's code is a closed thing. It holds a clan together precisely by staying the same generation after generation, a signal built to resist change. Somewhere in the warm breeding water off the tropical islands, another ocean-crossing sound is doing the opposite. It is a signal that will not hold still, one that changes, and as it changes, sweeps clear across the Pacific. In the warm water off a tropical island, a whale hangs head down in the blue, motionless, and sings. He is a male humpback, nose tilted toward the seabed and his great body motionless, and from him comes a sound that carries for miles through the water. It is not a random noise. It is a song with a strict order, a sequence of themes, each built from repeated phrases, delivered in the same arrangement over and over, sometimes for hours without a pause. And he is not singing it alone. Every male in these breeding grounds is singing the same song, note for note, theme for theme. They have agreed, without ever meeting to decide, on a single shared version. These are the tropical breeding grounds of the South Pacific, sheltered water off islands like Tonga, where humpbacks gather through the winter to breed after feeding all summer in cold seas far to the south. The males sing here more than anywhere else, and the song they share is not fixed. It drifts slowly as small changes creep in season by season, until, some years, one change does not stay small. A single male tries something new, a phrase in a slightly different shape, a rising figure where the old song fell away. Nearby, another male is listening. Within days, his own song carries the same new phrase. Then a third takes it, and a fourth. The change does not stay with the animal that invented it. It moves, male to male, through the whole singing population, until the new version is the only version anyone sings, and the old song is simply gone. No whale was taught it. They copied it from each other by ear. Then something stranger happens. Seasons later, and an ocean away, in a breeding ground thousands of miles to the east, whales that have never met the first singer begin to carry that same phrase. The song has crossed the open Pacific. It did not ride on any single animal's back. It passed along a chain of listeners, from one population to a neighboring one, where their ranges brush at the edges, and from that one on to the next, rolling eastward across the ocean in a slow wave that can take years to travel from one side to the other. Whole populations abandon the songs they knew and converge on a version that began in a different sea entirely. Follow it back against the current of listeners, and the trail runs west, coast after coast, to a breeding ground where the phrase was first sung by one whale that no longer sounds unusual at all, because by now, the ocean east of him sounds like him. That spread changes the scale of the story. A single call can disappear into the next swell, but a copied phrase does not depend on one throat. It becomes a pattern that survives by moving. Each singer keeps it alive only by changing his own breath and timing to match what he has heard. The result is not a territory conquered by force, but a sea briefly synchronized by attention. One careful change carried until distance itself begins to sound smaller. At last, the answer arrives in sound. A body is bounded. It can only be in one place, and in time it dies. An idea is not bounded. It copies itself into the next mind, and travels where no single animal could ever swim. The song matters because it proves that intelligence does not have to defeat the Pacific by overpowering it. It can cross the ocean by being learned. The phrase moving across an ocean is a solution held in one mind and handed to another. That is how cognition beats a hunting ground large enough to erase any single life. It refuses to stay inside one life. Off the island, the male tips upright and rises through the shafts of falling light, breaking the surface to breathe. Somewhere to the east, in water he will never see, another whale is already singing his song. A song crosses an entire ocean, passed ear to ear until a whole sea carries a phrase that began in one throat. It is the largest form of the smallest thing this water holds. Far to the east, on the temperate coast where the kelp still stands, an otter rolls onto its back, lays a stone against its chest, and cracks a shell open against it. The same act of finding an answer and handing it on, shrunk to a knock that barely carries past the fronds. The stone rises and falls. The otter picks the meat from the broken shell and lets the fragments drift down into the green.